I read 55 books in 2025, and here are some interesting stats that I compiled from my reading year. And now it's going to be absolutely no surprise to anybody that 90% of my reading year was spent on history and nonfiction. I read somewhere between 48 to 49 books that were either history or nonfiction based, and it could be anything from true crime to specific history books or biographies, but that's just my jam. When I last did this video in 2024, I wanted to make sure that I read more work by female historians, and I'm glad to say that I did that. I read 13 different books by female historians, but also female journalists and female writers, which makes me very happy. The subject that most dominated my reading year in 2025 was Cuba and the Cold War, and that's because I read 6 books that either focus specifically on Cuba, the revolution, its people, some of the high-level figures in it, and events that involved Cuba, something specifically like the Bay of Pigs or the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, the most embarrassing stat is that I didn't even read 10 fiction books this year. I only read 5, so that's barely even 1 fiction book a month. In 2026, I've started out by reading fiction. My first book of 2026 was a piece of fiction, so it's a little bit more promising this year. We'll see how it goes, but I certainly need to do better in 2026. Needless to say, I read some of my favorite history this year in 2025, and some of the books that I read are still ruminating in my head more than the books that I read in the years previous, not because it was more recent, but because they stuck with me and I read some incredible work. That's just the foundation for another great reading year that's going to happen in 2026 with the same intention. So I'm really excited to see where I get this year. Let me know in the comments what some of your reading stats were and some of the interesting things that you pulled out of your reading year once you analyzed it. I'll see you guys there.